Hello and welcome to the program. My name is Michael Finney. Today I am joined by Bowen Greenwood. Would you like to say hello, sir?
How's it going, everybody? I'm really grateful to be on the show. Michael, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time, joining to chat and tell us a little bit about yourself. And let's start there. Let's hear some about you. We don't know you. This is the first time we've ever talked, in fact. We're in some of the group chats. We're on some of the social networks. But this is our chance to learn one-on-one.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much. So my name is Bowen Greenwood, and I have a standard joke. It's pronounced like bow and arrow, but with a silent arrow. I just kind of lucked out in the name front. My parents picked it out of a name book. The name actually is Welsh. It means son of Owen, but my father's name is Doug, so it doesn't really mean anything in my case. It just sounds cool. So I live in Montana. I was born here, lived here most of my life, except when I was going to college. Went to college in D.C. and got home as soon as I possibly could. And I started writing when I was still in college, which was a day or two ago in my case. Perfect. And it's been kind of the things I wanted to do in life, it's been one of the two big ones. And it's just, it's the most fulfilling, it's the best hobby that a person could possibly have. And every now and then I accidentally make a little money at it too, which is even better. So I've been writing since college, but the first time I got a book into publication was 2014, and kind of never looked back. It's I just keep on writing, and I keep on loving it. When I'm not writing, I work the soundboard for the worship team in my church, and my day job, I work in the court system here in Montana. At our state Supreme Court.
Beautiful. Helena, shout out. Beautiful state, honestly. Montana, been through, I don't know, a couple of times. Not enough, I can tell you that, but that Capitol building, classic.
Yeah, there's no such thing as too much Montana. And I actually work about a block and a half east of the Capitol building. So I'm glad you've been here.
Nice. We probably walked right by each other and didn't even know it when I was out there taking photographs. I'd like to get photographs of the Capitol buildings and the interior and all that.
Excellent. Yeah, it's quite possible. I might have waved to you on the street. You never know.
Yeah, I feel like it happened, in my imagination. Let's hear maybe a little bit about your influences, the authors that you grew up with, or folks out on the scene that you appreciate, what your style is sort of predicated on. Anything along those lines or all of those lines, you tell us.
Yeah, well, I started my creative journey as a Star Wars fan. I'm sure I'm not the only one of those. And I was young enough I'm old enough now to say that I saw it in the theaters originally in 1977. And when I loved it so much, my mother started buying me science fiction books, and I grew up on all of the big names that we all know. Arthur C. Clarke and Asimov and Ray Bradbury and Starship Troopers and all of that. And it just totally shaped my whole worldview. I keep telling people that if I don't really care if it's Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or who, but if I've got a couple $100,000 laying around before I die and I'm fit enough for them to let me on the ship, I will take one of those private space flights before I go, because that's something I've been dreaming of since I was a kid. And then, those were really foundational for me, all of those old classic works of science fiction. But if you want to know who really made me a writer, there's just not going to be any other answer than Tom Clancy. as I was growing up, I was a nut for all things military, kind of thought I was going to be in the military and fight in World War III when the communists came into Eastern Europe or Western Europe. I mean, that was my whole life up until I was 18. And in high school, I cracked open The Hunt for Red October, and here was an author writing about what I loved in a way that was real and authentic, and he knew what he was talking about. And I just read everything Clancy wrote himself, I should say, everything Clancy wrote himself until he died. And the first time I sat down to write a novel, I was basically just imitating Tom Clancy and didn't know anything about the FBI or the Secret Service except for what I'd written in his books. So it took me a while to write anything that was worth something, because mostly I was just writing Tom Clancy fan fiction.
Got to start somewhere. I feel like perhaps the writing creatives, they don't necessarily do some of what visual artists do or musicians do, covers, trying to replicate characters or styles and things like that. Very few authors are handwriting or retyping the manuscript of their favorite book, right? I mean, maybe it's something that should be part of the craft early on. I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
That's an idea I've never thought of before, but you're right. If you're a musician, you're going to be covering Bon Jovi or whoever when you're getting started, and authors don't have that experience. But it's interesting. I'm not sure how you'd make it work, but it's an interesting idea. There's a lot of folks in our sort of mutual social media community, X or Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, who I really enjoy reading their work. I'm afraid I'm going to butcher some names here, so I apologize to the victims in advance. But Sean Rowland's books, I've read those and I love them. I'm reading Danielle Saint-Just's newest book right now. And this is the one I'm going to get wrong. I'm sorry. I'm also switching back and forth between that one and S. Kirk Pershala's first of her series. There's so many great people in the writing community that I really enjoy having a chance to read their work.
Yeah, wonderful. It is, I think, very important to support the scene broadly and specifically. There's a lot of great stuff happening in the space that we inhabit that a lot of folks don't know about yet, and they need to. That's why, when I first crossed paths with you, it was through the base book sale. Obviously, I think I know that you had been participating, but for me, it was, I think, the military sci-fi collection that I curated. You put in one of your box sets. I want to say the Exile series. Don't beat me on the head if I'm getting it wrong.
100% right. Yep, no problems at all. That's the Exile War series, and I remember talking to you about that.
Yeah, very cool. You have a ton of books out, don't you?
Yeah. So at this point, I've got 29 out there. And that's just a result of, I got started in 2014. So I just kept on doing it and the books kept piling up.
That's like 3 a year or more. No, right? Close to. You're ripping.
About 3 per year. It's been a little less productive this year because I spent the whole year working on stuff that I haven't put out yet. So I've got all of 2025 with not a book to show for it, but they're all coming out now. So, and then one of them, a shout out to those guys. One of them that I wrote in 2025 is entered in the ARC Press Fiction Prize. So
congrats.
Hopefully I'll win that. You'll all be seeing it on July 4th of 2026 when America has its 250th birthday. But, this is such a great scene of indie folks that will get together on social media, such a supportive community. And I, like a lot of us, I kind of had a not a perfect experience with the last self-published science fiction competition, and at that moment, I sort of signed on with the base book sale for the first time, and so that's kind of how your path and mine crossed.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your approach to writing? Maybe how you get started, or how you proceed through, how you get something to the end, how you think about one novel within a series, anything really craft and philosophy oriented in the sense of, the work that you've done or intend to release.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm the only one who does this, but I just I take a cool character and I imagine I'm doing something interesting and start writing that and see where it goes. So if somebody who's never read a single thing I've written asks me for the first book to read, I usually tell them Irons in the Fire, which is the first of the Sherman Iron mysteries. And I just, I start out with a reporter trying to find the truth of why somebody got off of jail. And then he winds up with the dead body of a judge in front of him. He gets framed for that. He's running for his life. Just keep on making cool stuff happen, I just start writing until I run out, and I usually hit a point about 10, 15,000 words in where it's not coming anymore, and I've got too much stuff out there that to keep track of without writing it down. And that's when I sit down and actually start making an outline and try to figure out who might be the villain and what's going to happen from here. But the first part of it is entirely, they call it either discovery writing or seat of the pants writing. And that's the best part. I've got that going on right now.
Pantser.
Yes, pantsers, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, just stream of consciousness, letting it rip. I am completely the opposite. I'm kind of new to fiction. Let's put it that way. I've only been doing and exploring the fiction side of writing for the last couple of years. So it's still fresh to me. I don't know that I have necessarily the experience enough to do it that way. So I outline heavily, and then little things kind of emerge to me in a very non-linear way. I kind of plug that stuff in, and then I try to fill in between that. And I do mean that. Like, I'll write the end, I'll write in a little bit in the middle, I'll write here and there, and I'm like copious note taking throughout and early on before I even start, really.
Yeah, and the comment feature in Microsoft Word or Google Docs is something I use very heavily. An idea comes to me and I just note it down in a comment and come back to it later. I do eventually get to a point where I have to have some kind of outline in head, but I don't always start out that way.
What are your favorite parts of the process, or not necessarily even just the writing, but the creation and release of a book? Any of it, really?
Well, this will surprise you, but I love a good review. That's always a fun part when your ARC reviewers start sending you stuff back, or your beta readers start sending you feedback. Those are some of the great moments. I love... the standard 3-act structure that we all get coached about in writing, where you get to the end of Act 2 and there's a huge major crisis and everything looks lost. I love the moment where I figure out what that's going to be, which I don't usually know when I start. And then as you get to know the characters and you see them doing stuff, I hit a point where I'm like, what would really mess this guy's life up is if he found his girlfriend dead, or if his mentor left him. When you get that big realization of what's going to be the turning point of the story, that's so exciting, and it's really satisfying.
Interesting. Yeah. I feel like you've had that happen quite a number of times at this point, and to be able to replicate the feeling within the creative act, whatever it is, whatever it is that you are doing to be creative, whether it's music or writing or filmmaking or painting or anything, there's always kind of, I think that that point where it's distilled enough to where you really perceive it, it's crystallized, and you're able to make decisions about how to get it to the end, get it across the finish line. And that's what it sounds like it is for you.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. When you get into the place where you're making those decisions, it's like that's what creativity is all about. That's what the whole novel writing process was for. And like I say, I love a good review, but a lot of these stories that I've written, I would write them just because I like that story. And if nobody ever read it, I would still read it and enjoy it. The Exile War series is kind of that for me. I wrote the whole thing from the first page, aiming at one specific moment at the end of the fourth book. And reading that is so satisfying for me now that I wouldn't care if no one else had ever read it. That was the story I wanted to tell.
That's a really interesting perspective in the sense that people often say, write the books that you would want to read out in the world, but how often are we really rereading our work? Now, I perform the audiobook material. So in that sense, I'm reading it, but I don't often come back to it and reread it. Is that something that you are doing regularly with your collection?
Yeah, so I've had kind of a change in my reading schedule, which has interrupted how much I'm able to read anymore. But up until recently, I always felt a little bit guilty because I'm usually supposed to be reading somebody else's book. I've just gotten started on Danielle St. Just's book right now, and I've been supposed to read it for a long time. And I'm supposed to be reading somebody's book, and instead I'm cracking open one of the Exile War books again to read one of the scenes I really love and just feel those emotions all over again. And I'm like, sorry, writer friends, I'm getting to you as fast as I can, but I just got to have this moment here. It's, I guess it seems a little vain, but I love my books and I reread them a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're working on a long series, I feel like that's probably a good way to stay sharp on all of the details and the characters and the atmosphere and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've got a couple different series going on right now that I need to do more books in, and it always requires at least skimming the first few books again to kind of remember the world and remember where everybody is. That's the downside of writing in series, you got a whole lot of stuff to keep track of.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit and change gears towards the release you are making, after this session is recorded, but it'll be in advance of when this podcast recording comes out. We're talking about Seer's Blade. Tell us what we need to know about that title.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. That's my latest novel. It's called Seer's Blade. And for Seer's Blade is a return to Christian fiction for me. I have a couple of young adult Christian superhero novels out there, but for the most part, I haven't been writing Christian fiction for a while. And for this novel, I just took something that most evangelical Christians know to be true and take for granted, which is that demons are real and you fight them with a sword of the Spirit. And I turned it literal. So sword of the Spirit is the way the Bible refers to itself or to the Word of God. And so I just imagined, what if demons were physical things that you could see and stab in the heart? And what if a sword of the Spirit was something that came to you when you figured out your Bible verse. That verse that just really speaks to you. You'll probably hear a lot of believers call it a life verse or something like that. That little collection of words out of the Bible that sums everything up for you. And so the idea is a standard kind of hero's journey where you've got a main character, Ewan Baxter, who, has the same kind of faith that I think truckloads of Americans have, goes to church on Christmas and Easter, but doesn't know much more about it than that. And has to kind of get to know himself. Who is he really? What shaped him? What makes him who he is? And what does the Bible have to say to that person that he really is deep down? And when he figures it out, that's when he can become an effective demon fighter. It's a fun story. It's not unlike, not unlike Luke Skywalker when he finally says, "I am a Jedi." It's, that journey of self-discovery for a young hero, and it's really satisfying to write.
Is it part of any other series? Is it a standalone?
So this is depending, of course, on whether anybody likes it. This will be the start of a new series. I've got a whole bunch of titles in my mind. We can do Seer's War, Army of Seers, Seer's Rest. I could do this all day in terms of writing in this universe. But it's brand new. There is nothing to read before this. So people who've never read a Bowen Greenwood book before, which you should do, can pick this up and enjoy it without having read anything else. I think all of us know as writers that you get better just by doing it. And so I'm always happier to recommend people to my more recent books because I don't feel like I was very good back in the old days. And it's always, sort of a double-edged sword to recommend people my old books, because some of those have by far the most reviews and they've been my most successful, but I really look at them now and I'm like, I don't love that as much. So Seer's Blade is one that it's brand new. It's absolutely whatever talent I may have is at its most finely honed point in that book right now. And I just can't wait for people to read it because it's a story I love. It's an idea I love. It represents things that are very important to me, and it's good writing too.
Isn't that interesting, kind of how things go? Fandoms often latch on to the early work of an artist that they like, whatever that might be. But the artist will think that their later stuff, they've really dialed into the mechanics and the aesthetic and their skill set about their craft. But then, the audience is like, play the hits, please.
Yes, exactly. And it's interesting for me as a writer, because my first books were thrillers. They're very, like I say, I was basically kind of imitating Tom Clancy. They're very modern world, very technology and techno thriller oriented. Mysteries that could take place, that make you feel like if this is really happening. I just haven't read about it in the newspaper yet. And when I made the switch to science fiction for the Exile War series, I definitely have quite a few readers who are like, give me more thrillers. I don't want to read space opera. So you're right about that. A lot of the, I don't want to say fans, but the folks who are generous enough to read my books, there definitely is a split between people who like the old works and people who like the new.
Well, that's a real genre shift. That's something that, how often are we finding music listeners or fans of a filmmaker when they were known for such and such genre, when they move over to something else, they don't retain that listenership or that viewership or that readership over into their new work. It is what it is.
You're not wrong about that. I guess if yeah, I'm too old to know any of the real modern singers. But if somebody who made pop music started doing rap or something like that, I could easily imagine losing a few listeners. But again, I write stories that I love, that I want to tell, and sometimes they find readers, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, you can't hit home runs every time up at bat. I have one last question for you today. Are there any things you haven't said that you feel you need to get off your mind, or are not addressed, thoughts that have not been tapped into yet in this conversation?
Well, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here and have a conversation with you about writing, talk a little bit about Seer's Blade. Thank you. And a thank you to everybody who's listening and everybody who reads my books. It is, I write because I love it. Writing gives me joy, and writing is basically given its life by readers. So I am hugely grateful to everybody out there who reads books. And then the other thing, I just want to encourage people about is this is a great world we live in, where you can, anybody out there in the world can pick up a word processor and sooner or later have 50,000 words written and click publish on Amazon and have a book out there. And, we all know there's no need to fill up the indie world with more crap. But on the other hand, it's a great world where you can chase your dreams and tell the stories you want to tell. And I love living in it. So if you got any listeners who are thinking about trying it and haven't, I recommend writing very highly. It's an extremely satisfying hobby. And like I say, I actually make a little money at it, so that's even better. But it's just something that I think the whole world ought to try out.
Absolutely. Bowen, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate having the conversation and look forward to the release of your book and look forward to the other things that you do in the rest of the year.
Thank you very much. I am so grateful to have been here, and I'll be seeing you around social media and the group chats, I'm sure.